What I would like to talk about for a few minutes is the idea that is titled Ignition of Contemplation. When is it that we truly find the need to begin contemplating things? What does that word even mean to us? And even though there are many answers, because there are many different people, in my experience, contemplation is when you want to re-experience yourself in a more vibrant manner, where you want to see more out of what you're looking at. In other words, if one is present, if one is here, then what is here is the most immediate connection you have to know. For through the knowing that one obtains by really feeling that they're here, many intricate details open. It's as if there is both the general sense of well-being, but also the individual sense of what is well as well. How you appreciate the foundations of yourself go back to how you have seen others appreciate themselves, and also the activities you have played in regards to the actions and decisions you've made. In other words, your experiences are being filtered through the lens of your past experiences. And this is not for everyone, this is for some. And this is, of course, for some cases. It's not a common thing. But when you allow your experience to navigate on its own, you realize you'll never be afraid to explore. When the fear of exploration leaves, because you don't even know what you're exploring, you cannot even fear it. It's moving to unknown, and I am talking here about not a form of physical exploration, but an inner revealing form of realization where you begin to explore your intelligence, your existential intelligence, and the exploration that you do with that. Therefore, to sustain our flow of understanding, we need to look at what we want to understand. We need to engage with it and interact. For some things you can never know until you talk to someone. I can look at a person walking somewhere else and I could make infinite assumptions, but some knowing, some specific things which I don't have access to, it is only when I ask and when I enter that space and I interact in that manner that I begin to see more than I thought I could see. Therefore, you need to be open to letting definitions change with every exploration. And every exploration is always within the present. It is a stream of perception. In other words, you can sit on a field of grass and you can only engage with the ideas you have. You can think about how nice the grass is, the weather is, how your body is, how the sun feels, if you're tanned up or not. You can entertain these ideas. Or as you become present, you can allow your body's energy levels to adjust, and therefore the contemplation is a natural state. So to reframe what I just said, this last sentence, when you sit down and you stop trying to explore and you simply be, and hopefully be around nature when you're hearing this, you naturally, when you become mindful, flow towards a very open and pleasant and aware state of contemplation. We are bringing limitation on ourselves if we stop a lot of our activities in which we find our problems to manifest from. Literally, our attention will be more within the present and more capable of using different ideas and notions and conceptions, such as how to navigate through space and time, and stories. What we find fundamentally is that by simply being, without wanting anything, without wanting to know a certain specific, without really wanting to open the door and knocking on the door, by simply sitting there might not even be a door. You might simply just receive that which is sprouting out of your last realization on whatever idea you were trying to understand more on. So, in a sense, the ignition of contemplation really begins with stillness, in my view. And when one is still, the silence also shifts in the manner that you find it. In other words, as you're still and you comfortably breathe without thoughts about how to breathe, without any other plan of action, to be still. When you are here, and so is the contemplation. You see, taking the scenario where a little child is on a stroller and just being moved. The child doesn't know how it's being moved, but it's seeing the world around it. Once it wants to see more, it wants to engage in its environment more than how it's just sat in the cradle, as if the child wants to stand up and go play or go do something. That level of experience means the child must be aware of where it feels it must go. Your awareness to your feelings is an important element, because not all contemplations translate into ideas. Some are simply understandings that only remain in your eyes. They don't carry on into ideas because they don't need to. They can't be maintained in that pottery class, in a sense. They can't be maintained in that molding section of your own relevance. Therefore, when one is trying to contemplate, the ignition begins with stillness. And as it amplifies, and as your awareness of your presence observes the ideas and the ideas of you and all categorizations that are being kept, and which by letting go, in other words, by doing nothing, will simply fade into another form. This is pointing to ideas. Then you will have the openness to see more. If you hold on to a viewpoint, if you just want a certain type of answer, if you're only looking for one ending to your story, you're not going to see the infinite possibilities. And one of those infinite possibilities is that the story never ends. The story doesn't end. So once you observantly float above the ideas that have caved you and that have made you heavy, you become a bit lighter by realizing that you don't need to put in your attentive energy into thinking about an outcome or a certain scenario based on a certain case or whatever your problem is. You don't need to really think about, what am I going to do with my life if this doesn't happen. You simply don't feed that energy in that direction. You simply remain in the present, and you notice, because sometimes our answers to our solutions are not based on the story. Once the story leaves, there's a recalibration of our own sense of identity in regards to what the values of our actions are. So in other words, you may think you've just lost your job, your life's going to end. You may think that you're a student and you failed your class, your life will end. You may think that you're a junkie and your life will end. But you need to understand that you've cheated on your wife will end, whatever you're thinking about. Once you stop playing and engaging with that story, literally you get off that cradle, you're no longer in that ride. There's a re-identification where before, where you didn't have choices, now you have many more choices because the energy is flowing differently through you. In other words, a compassionate person and an angry person and a very egotistical person are different in the sense, not of what they are, but in how they are directing their energy to have a reality manifest and a reality that is reflective. Therefore, some are aware that they're looking in the mirror when they're seeing this life. Others believe that the reflections they're seeing is the only thing in the mirror. There's always more behind you in the mirror. Once all walls break, you put a mirror on the ground and look at the reflection of the sky, and you see that the mirror is simply reflecting an infinite quality. Therefore, meaning and contemplation is also infinite. We can always know more. We can know beyond this physical body. Right now that we are in this physical body, the technologies, physical technologies that are developing, such as social media and other forms of that kind of technology. And there's also inner technologies which are not that common in the West, but are really common in the East. In other words, you don't just work with the information you have on a physical level. You work with multidimensional. You work in a multidimensional setting where you have a greater range of knowing. In other words, at some point when you feel your bond and connectivity, when you're at peace, you realize that you begin to receive more of an intuitive trust in the slight impressions and inclinations you have towards action. In other words, your action becomes valuable through not the value that you're giving, through the value that's really there. In other words, intuition develops once contemplation frees up your hands to actually pick up something that you really want. And when I say really want, it is the most vibrant thing, and you will be very excited. In other words, what is better, a person who is excited in every moment of their life, or a person who works maybe 5 to 6 days a week and goes through some form of accepted hell, and then lives parties out on Fridays and goes back to that same cycle of energetic expression. See, the problem is not the activity, the problem is not financial, the problem is that how you are designing your lifestyle and how you work, it is giving you a certain proximity and range of energetic expression. If you work in an environment where people are telling you to be quiet, your level of creativity is less. Creativity is a higher quality, and it's a vaster engagement, a more interactive engagement, more conscious interactive engagement with everything. Creative people are not afraid. It transcends fear, and you begin to be playful with your environment. So if you find yourself getting bored, if you find yourself hating where you are or disappointed, know that there's some ideas mainly within you, and also, expressive physically in your mind. Maybe there's a douchebag, or there's a very annoying person who's bothering you, or whatever you've attracted to yourself. Regardless of that, you are dictating how much you can have from your day. You are dictating the proximity of energy, expression, and awareness, if that means anything to you in a more personal way. And then through that, contemplation leads the way. You see, many people think that if you sit down and think about an idea, you'll just get another idea. You'll just get another idea. Actually, once you really become aware and you sit down and you look at how ideas are being presented to you, literally how ideas are being received by you, you realize that the intelligence, and when I say intelligence, I'm not talking about how you find your intelligence. There is a certain flow, and you may call it cycles, you may call it patterns, you may call it intelligent intelligent beings, whatever you like to call, there's a certain flow in regards to the direction of how ideas are presented to you. Stillness is when you can perceive the best movement, and also stillness is the best moment for perceiving the movement of your ideas, and that is contemplation in a sense. And contemplation can be done anywhere. The stillness is not always a physical stillness. You could be running and you could just be looking ahead at the sky or something, and suddenly you're observant of this vaster movement of existence that is becoming relevant to you. It is simply opening up. So the ignition of contemplation is really fueled by your sense of sensitivity to know and to live a life with more vision, with a depth that is more enabling than the shallowness you find yourself in. For example, not everyone is shallow. Not everyone even needs to bring in this idea that should I be deep or shallow. Life teaches you what it needs to teach you. And, before life teaches you, life has created you in the way that you need to be created now to even hear this message. So, once your fixed interpretations of how reality is become a bit more loose, sit down in nature and really try to perceive. Do not try to think, do not try to observe, but also if your thoughts are flowing with a certain movement, with a certain direction, follow them. Be observant. Be observant of your mental activity, be observant of your physical activity, be observant of life's touch. And above all, how you touch life.